The 1940s were pretty much dominated by only two things. The first half of the century was dominated by World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945. After the war, there was a lot of political fear and fear that society is advancing too quickly with all of the technological discoveries that happened during the war being put to use in a non-war setting. There's a lot of fear that these advancements are just going too far too quickly. These include computers, jet propulsion, and nuclear power, where it's just a time of uncertainty across the entire decade. Because science and technology really dominated the 1940s so thoroughly, I kind of want it to dominate my reading for this month. And the only thing that I am reading this month is science fiction, specifically a dystopian type of science fiction, or the fake utopias. So everything I'm reading this month is science fiction, and I think everything is a dystopian future. I don't think there's any like light science fiction that is not some sort of dystopian future in my reading. I could be wrong, but my understanding is all of this is dystopia. So the first book that I am reading for 1941 is Methuselah's Children by Robert Heinlein. This is one of two books that I am reading by this author this month, so hopefully he's a really good writer. This is about a utopia, but the utopia that society is in now is threatened by technological advances, specifically the discovery of immortality. So from the look of the cover of this takes place on a spaceship, but all I know is it is a utopian society that is being threatened by technological advances. Next up for 1942 is a thick book. This is about 1,000 pages long. It's called Islandia by Austin Tappan Wright. From my understanding, this book was discovered by the author's family after he had died in his papers, and no one knew he was writing it. So it was published post-mortem, and this is a book about an American diplomat who travels to a society in a country that has never been discovered before now. Think like Wakanda in the Marvel universe. The diplomat goes to this society, which turns out to be like the perfect utopian world, and after he leaves to go home, he kind of wastes away his life longing to just go back to Islandia, where everything is perfect and everything is happy. And that sounds like a great setup for a horror story, or at least a dystopia novel. So that's what this chunker is about. Next up for 1943 is The Glass Speed Game by Hermann Hesse. He was a German writer who wrote an anti-fascist novel. Germany did not like that at all in the early 1940s, as one would assume that a fascist country does not like an anti-fascist novel. He had to flee Germany, and this was published in Switzerland. This takes place in an indeterminate time in the future, assumed to be like the 25th century, in a boarding school. And there is a game that exists in this universe called the Glass Speed Game, and the game is one of the most complicated things in existence, and it takes like a true genius mind to be able to play it at all, much less be good at playing it. The Glass Speed Game itself is a complicated mix of music, mathematics, and cultural history. And I assume it's somehow anti-fascist and has to do with these, I'm assuming, boys, because it's the 1940s, who have to dedicate their entire lives to just basic comprehension of this game in order to be good at it, and then do something anti-fascist. I don't really know. All I know is it's anti-fascist, and it involves this game somehow. Next up is Sirius by Olaf Stapledon. This has 2 books in it, so I'm thinking Sirius is a very short novel if there's 2 books in here. This one is very interesting because, like Call of the Wild, it's from the perspective of a dog. And Sirius is a dog who is artificially created. He has above human intelligence. It's kind of his battle of being rejected by his own kind because of his vast intelligence and how different that makes him. So that sounds really freaking weird, but very different, and I'm totally down for it. Next up is a book that, basically all of us have heard of, which is Animal Farm by George Orwell. Now, it's the story of Nazis, kind of. It's about animals on a farm who rebel against the farmer that owns them. Next up for 1946 is Slan by A.E. von Vogt, and this book to me sounds like the X-Men. It is about humans that have evolved to have, basically superpowers. They have psychic abilities, super intelligence, they can read minds, have near limitless stamina, nerves of steel, and superhuman strength and speed. And humanity is threatened by these evolved humans, and they're being hunted to the death. And the story is about one of these Slan who is being hunted by humans and trying to survive in this world that's set out to wipe him out for being different. Next up in 1947 is a book called Sinister by Vladimir Nabokov, I think is how you say his name. He's a Russian author. And this one sounds like a very basic, generic dystopian novel where society is run by a very, very controlling government, where people are discouraged from being unique. Everybody should be the same, act exactly the same, and it promotes the state or the government as the prominent good in the world. So, communism. You get that a lot in, dystopian novels right after World War II, where the world fought against communism. 1948 is my other book by Robert Heinlein, which is called Beyond This Horizon. This again takes place in a utopian society where the world is free of poverty, pain, and disease, but it comes at a cost. And this book follows a group of people who are rebelling against the government in this supposedly utopian society, and it is a very, very short book, so it should be a quick read. Next up is the literally quintessential dystopian novel, and I kind of have to read it because it's named after the year I was born, 1984, by George Orwell. Basically, in this novel, the government controls everything. It takes place roughly 40 years after it was written. obviously in 1984, and it takes place in London, and the government controls everything. Like, people have no privacy, they have no individuality, and they just must follow the government and must be happy at all times. If you're wondering where the date comes from, because it's just an interesting little tidbit, this was written in 1948, so Orwell just switched it around and then called it 1984. It was published in 1949, which is why I'm reading it for 1949, but that's where that arbitrary, or seemingly arbitrary, date comes from, is just switching around the year that he wrote it in. And finally, for 1950, I am reading I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. I, Robot, you might have seen the movie with Will Smith. Not really an accurate portrayal. The Law of Robotics is a short story in the I, Robot collection. The entire book is a group of short stories with a continuous theme across the entire book, and that theme is that all of the short stories are told by the same narrator, Dr. Calvin, to a reporter. And Dr. Calvin is like the creator of a robotics facility, I guess. And basically all of these short stories are just different stories about her career that she is telling to a reporter at the end of her career. And that pretty much sums up what I'm reading for the 1940s. What do you guys think about doing the theme, the sci-fi theme, for the entire month? Do you think this is cool? Do you think I should mix it up more like I do every month? Let me know. This is the first real theme month. I tried to have a theme month in February with the romance, but I was hard pressed to find enough romances. It was during World War I, and just not a whole lot of people were writing, period. I will be able to do more themes as more books get published, going further into the century. So if you have any ideas for future themes to do, let me know down in the comments, and let me know what you think about my dystopia month that I've got going on here, and I will see you in the next video.